Hey everybody, welcome to the Fire It Up with CJ show. Today we are going to have a really interesting show. We're going to be talking to Professor Bernard Roth, and we are going to be talking about his book, The Achievement Habit. So welcome, Professor Roth.
Hi.
So I wanted to, I was watching one of the videos that you did at Google, and when you were presenting this body of work, and you said that there were a lot of touching stories that you received after writing this book, and I was wondering if you could share some of the stories that you got after writing this book and how they touched you.
Sure. Well, they're the kind of, I got the problem solved in my life stories. So I got one from a woman who said uh, she had heard about my book and she already had 10 self help books and she wasn't going to buy it and all that. But when she heard me give a presentation, she was so touched by it, she actually bought the book. And she's really glad she did because she solved a big problem in her life that she's had for over 30 years.
Wow.
Just by the time she got to chapter three. so, so that was good.
Wow.
Other one was at the opposite end. They had a young man in high school who was deaf from birth and was pining for, love and relationships and all that. And somehow, reading my book, he was able to come to some equilibrium with that. So that was quite touching.
Mm.
And then I get, they're in the framework of, you helped me see what the real problem was, or you helped me realize how I was going about things in the wrong way.
Hmm.
And they're just the personal kind of statements, but or I healed a relationship. There's actually one story that's actually in the book of a student who healed a relationship with his father, and then 2 months later the father died, and that's a very moving kind of experience,
Mm.
him and me, and stuff like that. So it just gets to getting your life more where you want it to be. And when people do that, I find that very moving. So
Yeah.
if they share that with me, I feel great about it. But it's even people like I work with this woman. She used to work for the Washington Post, and now she works for us, and she's a blogger, and she's very hip on the internet. So uh, I use her counsel, and she read the book in manuscript form and all that. And when we started to work on the book, she reread it, and she came to me. She said, you got me to the point where I've just been thinking about writing my own book, and I'm never doing. And now I'm getting up 3 o'clock every morning to do it. I'm not just going to try to do it. I'm actually going to do it, and that was like sort of inspirational because she's been around in my life so much. And when
Wow.
she was just reading it again, and it just struck her she ought to apply this to herself and not just worry about blogging about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's so interesting too because it's different parts, right? So in some instances, it was her maybe getting unstuck. In some instances, it was redefining a problem. I actually read the book, and I'm a life coach, so actually a lot of this stuff is familiar to me.
Yeah.
But there was an exercise that you have in here, which was it was one in your self image, and you're supposed to take a problem that you have and try to kind of just change and shift your perspective. And I've been getting over the last, gosh, 5 months, but over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've been getting hives mysteriously. They arrive all over my body, on my chin, on my back. Like, I'm getting hives and I have no control over when they happen. When they happen, if I scratch them, they get worse.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, okay, I'm going to do this exercise. It's a one where you recall an issue that occurred in your life and then you embody it and then you take it and you look at it from a distance. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to reframe this awful thing that's happened to me.
Yeah, I call it the truth process. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, the truth process and reframe it. And I realized that because to me, what has meaning to me is a spiritual practice. And to me, I thought, well, this is actually just like life, right? We think we have control, but we have no control over we really don't have control over life in many ways. Things happen randomly. We don't know why. We feel like we can control them, but they can't. We can't. And so I'm actually adding a bunch of suffering as a result of the way that I'm thinking about this truth
Oh,
for
yeah.
me.
So that's very common that people lay on what they already have and make it worse. So
Yes.
if someone is depressed, they're often depressed about being depressed.
Right. It's so
But
true.
it's so true. It's like, I can't stand it. I'm so depressed. But if you just say, this is depressed, I actually have a thing where you exalt it. You say, this depression is the worst depression I've ever had. Wow, what a fantastic depression I've had. But just to get to experience the actual thing you have and not deny it and not get depressed or upset because you have it, but just say what you have. And it's so what in a way. It just is what it is.
Yeah,
And you're not changing it by adding this extra burden on it, and
right,
it's really hard for people to understand that. And it's a simple thing. In my book I talk about a simple thing like dishwashing is a great example of that.
right,
You know what I mean? If you, let's say, for whatever reason, like you were a child and they made you wash dishes and you hate it and all that stuff, if you just go there and you say, what I'm doing is washing dishes, and what's the experience? Well, I have warm water on my hands. I have, so that's not so. If you just take
right,
what it is and not your ideas about it, the
right,
experiences are just experiences. They don't have any valence. You give them a valence,
right,
and and actually, dishwashing, as an example, is actually a pleasurable activity.
right. But
And
we give it meaning that's negative.
meaning, that's bad. So you give everything in your life your meaning in addition to your experiences. You give meaning.
Right.
And that's the part that gets you really into trouble if you just
Yeah.
look at the experience. So, it's a kind of Buddhist thing of non-judging and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And if you can get there, it really does a lot for
Yeah,
you.
like so I'm still getting hives.
Yeah.
And I said to my husband, when I'm getting hives, I just view this as a time to meditate because there's nothing I can do. And I can't scratch. And so I remember being in a mindfulness meditation process where you feel a scratch and you're not supposed to itch it. You're supposed to just be mindful of it and breathe through it. And I've been doing that. And now actually this thing that I've hated over the last couple of weeks has been, oh, it's a time for me to remember to meditate. I've totally reframed this thing.
It's a trigger for a good action.
Yeah, it's like a good habit. Good. It's helping me develop this good habit. Okay, so so I want to go back to the title is the achievement habit, and you have a sentence in the book where you define achievement. Oops, excuse me. You define achievement as having a good life, getting the job of living done in a satisfying way that nurtures the life force. And so what I wanted to do is break that down because you've been, you're teaching this material. I assume that you've been thinking a lot about this as well. What is a good life to you? For you personally, what is a good life?
Yeah, I'd say a good life. I feel blessed by where I am in life in the sense of I have a job that I find very satisfying. I enjoy going into work every day. I've been doing this for a lot of times, and I think back, maybe there have been 3 days in 50 years when I didn't feel great about being on the job.
Three
Well,
days? Come on, Bernie. That's not true.
and I tell you, so I feel very blessed to have that,
Yeah,
have that
yeah.
experience. Well, I have some colleagues who are unhappy.
Hmm.
So I have people. I had a friend actually. He taught at a University of California, Santa Cruz, and he lived in Berkeley.
Hmm.
So my house was a halfway place, and he used to sleep in my house. Coming when he'd go back home, he'd go
Right.
down for a few days, work there, and he'd sleep over in my house. And he would always say, he says, your life is fantastic. He says, you have this incredible life. I wish. And I said, I don't understand it. You have the same job I do.
Right.
And plus, I have you're single, you're Playboy, you have a
Right.
great car, you have all these women, you have all that stuff. What is it about it? Well, it's just the way his attitude was. I didn't have anything more or less really on a cosmic sense than he had, but he chose to see the world in a way of lacking. And it's
Mm.
just a matter of some people, it's not the objective circumstances. It's what you do. Now, some circumstances are much better than others. If you're locked away in jail, it's a little harder.
Right.
But still, in all, a lot of us lock ourselves away in jail without it. I got a letter from a woman. She was she was an academic and she couldn't get a job. This goes back many years. And her husband got a job and they wouldn't hire the wife also. So she was home ironing his shirts every day. And at some point she had an epiphany. And the epiphany was the only person keeping her there ironing the shirts is her.
Right.
Nobody is making her do that. And if she wants to, and if she can't get an academic job, she has to get some other things she wants. So she decided to write a book. And she did a book which is I love it. I think it's one of the best books I've ever read. And she just did that in a way because she got the realization that no one was keeping her in jail of ironing shirts except her. And she had resigned herself to that situation. And
Mm-hmm.
if she enjoyed ironing shirts, that'd be great. But if
Right.
she didn't enjoy ironing shirts, she had to change it and get to something which was great for her. She ended up actually being a president of a university. I mean, she had
Wow.
this great career. Yeah, so it's a really great story.
Yep.
So she wrote the book and led to another thing, and eventually she became a professor. Eventually she became a president of a university.
Wow.
But she started out in this thing where she was trapped, and she realized the only one trapping her there was herself. And you
Mm.
have to realize that that's the case for most of us. Most of us, even when there's a physical entrapment, there's been a lot of things about prisoners and all that kind of stuff. It's really where you put yourself. So that's I don't want to be Pollyannic and people think of some pipe dream and a counterexample and all that. I'm talking just practically speaking. If practically speaking you really don't like it, you should get to a place where you're happy. I'm lucky. I'm in a place that I'm happy about. Now there are things I haven't liked about it during the time, and I've changed them. That's all.
Right.
So it's as simple as that.
Well, so I'm someone that my husband describes as biased for action.
Right.
Whenever something comes up, I'm on it. I'm doing it. I find 20 different ways of doing it. If I'm blocked, I keep on moving forward. I'm kind of the prototype that you have in this book.
Yeah.
And sometimes he'll say, "Well, you're different. That's the way you are. Not everyone is like you. You're unusual." Do you think that's true, or is that an excuse or a reason for why you don't do something?
Sure. Well, when you say you're that way, uh, it implies you were born that way and you can't help it. You can't change it. And as I mentioned in the book, I have a son that has cerebral palsy and he's
Hmm.
retarded and he has muscular issues. And if my wife criticizes him, he'll often say, "I can't help it. I was born that way."
Hmm.
And, I want to cry when he says that and all
Yeah.
that. But still, in all, she's right. I mean, he doesn't have to do that. He's just using his condition to get away with some sloppy stuff like his
Hmm.
eating habits and stuff like that.
Right.
So the truth is, yeah, there's all sorts of people in my life that are wheelchair bound. They don't have vision. They don't have hearing. And if you meet some of these people, they're amazing.
Hmm.
There's one fellow I had as a student. He was amazing. He started his own companies, built two houses, and
Wow.
he's paralyzed. He's paralyzed. So he could just as well use that as a reason to stay home, and no one would fault him, and I would think that's normal. But when you see these people who get beyond that, you realize it doesn't have to be that way.
Mm.
And if he was comfortable with not doing anything, that's fine. But yeah, there are some people I'd say who are more bent towards a bias towards action than others. But that's more habit, I think, than it is inborn nature. It's really what you're kind of used to. It's just a kind of what we call self-efficacy. So
Right.
if you first don't do things when you're a kid and everyone lets you get away with it, and you just keep never doing it, and you never get an epiphany to change, you'll always be that way. You think that's the way you are. But in
Right.
fact, if you do something and you get a reward for it and you feel better about it, you'll do some more because you want more rewards.
Right.
And you'll get more. And then all of a sudden, you're this crazy bias for action fool that everyone can keep up with you. That's how it happens. I mean, I look at my own life. I wasn't born to be a professor. I didn't know. I wasn't even interested in school. I was a kind of delinquent when I was a teenager. I
Hmm.
was on the streets and I was cutting school all the time and I never got good grades. I just wasn't interested in any of that. And then suddenly I became interested and suddenly I did well and I got rewards and one thing led to the other thing and it goes that way. So
Yeah.
it's a matter of doing stuff and taking yourself out of what you are now. And you can't suddenly jump from 0 to 100, but you can jump from 0 to 0.1 to 0.2 to 1 to 1.5 to 2. And eventually you'll get to close to 100. You can stop at 96. It's
Right. But what I'm hearing you say, it's a learned behavior. You can read
yeah,
this book and learn how to become
yeah,
biased for
of
action.
course. And there are other books also. It's
Yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah. No, I know that.
You can learn behavior. It's just a matter. I call it a matter of whether you want to do something or try and do something. And there's a big difference between the two of them. And trying is fun and all that, but it's not doing. So if you try and do something and there's an obstacle in your way, you're usually deterred.
Right.
You tried and there was I couldn't do it, and that's the end. You go back and sit down. We have this here. The classes we are here are very popular, so a lot of them are limited by the number of students you take. So most students, they come and they don't get into the class. After the first day, they go away and they disappear. But if a student really wants to go, they don't disappear. The press says there's no room. They go and they come back the next day. And if usually someone drops out and they get in. And I have so many friends now. If the joke is Bernie threw me out of class, but I didn't go away. And,
It's like that scene in Fight Club. They keep on doing. Try, do not try, do. Do you think life is just about doing? Because my biggest thing that I've been working on is in my mind, because I'm biased towards action. I'm also biased towards thinking that doing is the only thing.
yeah,
And there's in spiritual practice they talk about being.
sure.
How do you balance those two in your own life?
Sure. Well, doing is a funny word. So I take doing in a very large sense. So if you have nothing going on, and the good story is this book in the 1800s about a Russian nobleman called Oblomov, who for the first 200 pages of the book never leaves his bed.
Right.
And that's because he has nothing to do and he has rich people he has servants to take care of him and all of that. And that's a fantasy, but it's a critique of the idle aristocracy, okay? But the point simply is, it doesn't matter how much money you have or whatever you have. If you don't have some life force in you, you're not doing anything in a way. And that's really what it's about. But you don't have to physically be doing it. It could be in your head. It could be, it could be different ways. It just, it's just a matter of what's going on inside. And if nothing's going inside, all you're doing is watching reruns on TV and your life is just nothing, then you're not doing.
Right.
But you can be doing in various ways. It doesn't have to be the usual physical activity. I mean, we have a mind too. In the best of worlds, it'll be a mind and body activity.
Right.
So you're doing with all your being, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And that's what I would aim for. But actually, it's a question of how you're holding all this stuff and this whole idea of flow. If it really takes over your life, if you think about it. So I don't think about, oh God, I have to get up and I have to go to work. It's what I'm doing. It's not a question of it's
Right. It's like in yoga they talk about doing and being as a simultaneous process. Right?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because you're being pleasant, you're thinking positively, you're
yeah.
just flowing through the day. It's not
That's a good way to say what I'm
yeah,
trying.
yeah,
That's
not divisional. So
the being and the doing. Yeah.
yeah, you do it simultaneously, which is I think your yoga master. That's what they say is you're after. Okay, so one of the things that I notice the reason why people don't do things is because they haven't gone through some of the big picture questions. And you say that one of the important things is in the very beginning of your book, you talk about who am I, what do I want, what is my purpose, as kind of questions that I actually have reflected on my, the last 20 years of my life. I don't know, are these questions that you have also reflected on throughout the last,
Yeah.
yeah,
Last 40 years.
yeah, last 40 years?
Sure, yeah. And it's funny, I use them in my class, and just very short. I've actually done a whole weekend where you just stay with one question.
Yeah.
But, in class, it's 10 minutes, if that much on a question. And somehow there's something in those questions that transcends the answer to them. See, most of us are so hooked on a question has an answer. And these may not have answers. It's not important. But somehow just doing those exercises, no matter what the result is, seems to be really life-giving for the students. I find people get so excited and so energized by them, even if it isn't that they find a profound answer at all, in my view.
Right,
I mean,
right,
I don't really know I don't listen to, usually working with partners, I don't listen
right,
to
right.
it. But in general, my impression is they're not finding profound things, but they're kind of getting they're taking a few minutes out of their life and giving their life some attention. And I
Right.
think that's where it's at. We don't do that. We're so busy, doing the dishes or cooking or hustling a dollar or worrying about a relationship or, chasing another party or something like that, that we don't really stop and look at ourselves. And this is a kind of nice way to focus on that. And it's also a nice way to look at, people confuse what they have in life or who they are in life. And I actually like to break into three things. So, what do you have? What do you do? And who are you? So, sort
Mm-hmm.
of being, doing, and having. And it's okay to do all three things. Are in a way make up life. It's only bad when they get conflated. When they get
Ah,
so the classic is when you think, you have a big fancy car and that's you. And
you get identified with your
it's
possessions.
possessions as opposed to who you are
Yeah.
and stuff, and that's classic, kind of
Right.
stuff. So you have to show everyone how rich you are by
Right.
or whatever it is. So that's the classic thing. But I think it's even subtler than that, and some things it's the same answer. So actually my relation to teaching is such that I don't really know which. I think it's all three. So I
Doing,
think
being, and having.
yeah, I have a job as a teacher. I do teaching, and I think I was born to teach. I think
Hmm.
that, and the subject doesn't matter. I think it just resonates with me. Of all the things I've ever done in the world, I think that's what my being is about. That. So,
Hmm.
and I don't know if I have it right, but it's kind of interesting. So the whole idea is just it's useful to have these categories, but it doesn't mean they're exclusive. But it does give you this whole chance of seeing where you've confused the stuff between I have a car and I am a car.
Right.
And that's the important.
Right. It's to bring someone's conscious awareness that what
But
they're doing, who they're being, and what they're having are separate things.
so if you lose your job, you don't kill yourself because
Right.
that's
Because I'm no one now. Because I don't. I'm
yeah,
not. Yeah.
yeah. And then that's the other story. We don't know ever what the next step's going to be. So often, what looks like a catastrophe today turns out to be a big blessing tomorrow. So, and there are many stories about that. Like Oprah's the famous one. She hadn't got fired from her little job somewhere in a small radio
Right.
station. She probably never would have been this prominent person. But
Right.
there are a lot of people like that have had reversals that they're thankful for. Actors didn't get a part here, and then
Right.
suddenly this big thing opened up, which they would have never gotten if they gotten the. So it's a kind of interesting thing. We never know what one thing will lead to and all that, and we often give it so much meaning. And part of that is a confusing what we have, what we do, and who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And if you stay with who you are, you're more grounded in
Right.
general.
So when you actually have asked this question of yourself for the last 40 years, how have the answers changed?
Well, often it's the same. It's also so sometimes if someone, let's say I'm working with someone,
Yeah.
so if someone is asking me this question repeatedly, I might give the same answer 100 times. So my thing is when I get asked the question, I, as much as possible, attempt to treat it like I've never heard it before,
Right.
and I look inside for the answer, and whatever pops up is what I deliver.
Yeah.
Now, it's really hard after the 40th time of saying to do it the 41st time.
Right.
To be true to yourself, that's what you have to do. And
Yeah.
see what you get. And somehow it isn't, as I say, I don't get to a conclusion, but I get a sense of feeling. It just makes me feel more whole. It makes me,
Mm.
it kind of takes the usual fragments of life and kind of solidifies them better. And it makes me feel more grounded. And I'd say that's what I get out of it. I
Mm.
get out of a sense of grounding, a sense of purpose. And it's not the specific answer. It's like, I just heard something from an old tape that a friend of mine did years ago, and it's on YouTube. And
Mm-hmm.
he asked the audience, be in the situation of not knowing what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I just thought about that for the last few days because I just saw this old tape,
Yeah.
and it's a really interesting question. Like, what is it to be in the state of not knowing what you don't know,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to just not knowing? So most of us can be in a state I don't know. Okay, if you ask me about something, I don't know
Right.
anything about. I don't know, toe surgery.
Right.
I never studied toe surgery. I don't know anything about it. But if you ask me, well, what is it? What is it? But what is it you don't know about? That's interesting because
Yeah.
I say a lot of things I don't know about, but it's harder for me to tell you about the things I don't know about.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a kind of, it's a mind twisting thing.
Yeah.
And those kind of things can be useful in a way.
Yeah. So when if you look
They
at the
give you a,
trajectory of your 40 years
yeah,
and you've asked this question and you may have answered the same
yeah,
question
yeah,
40 times,
yeah.
how have the answers changed? Or are they consistent? Like 40 years ago, would you have said to teach, to
Yeah,
teach, to
yeah.
teach?
I don't like, to be frank, I don't remember what I said
Yeah.
40. So I hardly remember what I said a year ago.
I'm the same way. I just want you to know. Maybe I don't know that I don't know.
I'd say, as far as I know, there's no real pattern or path, and
Yeah.
a lot depends on the mood I'm in and the state and what happened the day before, and whether I'm in a blissful state or a more anxious state and stuff like that. So it just varies all over the place. But as I say, I don't think it's the answer. I mean, it's like the joke I like is someone says they're going to get the meaning of life, and they know they had it in their dream, but they lost it, so they leave a piece of paper by their bedside with a pencil,
Yeah.
and then they get up in the morning and they look anxiously and it says split peas or green beans or something like that. And I love that because that's the answer. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no one word.
Yeah.
No word. It's really the sense of what it does to your being that's important.
Ah, right.
If,
It's the outcome, not necessarily the answers even.
if we knew what the word was, someone would have patented or
Right.
so. There is no answer really. It's the process. It's the seeking. It's
Hmm.
what that way is what's important.
So, if there are there exercises in the books that you do currently, or all of them, some of them? What are the ones that you kind of go back to all the time?
Yesterday, I teach this class once a year. Yesterday was the first day of the class for this year.
Oh wow.
So I'm doing so. There's one exercise in there, which is how people get to know each other, where they go around and
Mm.
answer the question, when's the last time you did? And we just did that in class yesterday, and it was as powerful as. And I had about 20. So I had two groups of 8 and one group of 6 doing it. So I had the
Mm.
class broke into 3 groups, and uh, and at the end we did feedback going around, and it was like these people never met each other before and
Hmm.
all that, and it was toward the end of the class, so we'd done some other things before that, but going around they said, this is like amazing, these are all these strangers, and I never thought I'd reveal this about myself, and I feel so, and you could just feel the love, you just feel the
Well,
openness.
the questions, I'm trying to find the questions that you had in the group section, but they were great questions. When's the last time you got embarrassed? Or what are
Yeah,
the times
yeah,
that, you lost sleep over something?
yeah.
I mean, they're the real kind of questions where you really, really, truly get to know one another, which is so rarely what we do.
Yeah, well, what happens, most of us have it backwards. We think the less I reveal to you about me, if I tell you all about Bernie and all of that, you're not going to like me because, I have all these things. On the other hand, so I give you the superficial view of Bernie, which is nothing. And you don't fall in love with me, you don't like me, you just, you take me, I'm just a person. But if somehow I open my heart to you, you're going to fall in love with me. If you open
Hmm.
your heart to me, I had this thing. We 3 of us went out to a boys' night out up in San Francisco on Saturday night, and we had dinner together. We went to a jazz concert, and then we said, "Oh, let's go to a bar to end the evening." And we're standing at the bar, and I just said, "Well, I have this exercise. I'm going to do it." So I just revealed something very personal to myself for these 3 people who I work with, and they know me very well. And I cannot tell you what went on with that conversation. And it went on for a long time. And
Hmm.
we all drove home. And the next day, I get emails from these 2 guys saying, that was fantastic. I loved that thing at the bar. That made the whole evening was the bar.
Hmm.
One guy said, I'm so glad you're my friend. It made me cry. And it was just opened up in a level that we never did before to each other.
Hmm.
So this class thing is similar to that. It's not as deep, and it's more people around and all, but it does the same kind of thing. It's just this whole idea of sharing. And I cannot tell you, I'm sure I've had this experience many times. Even you'll meet a stranger somewhere on a bus or a plane, or someone sitting next to you on a plane, and you start to have this conversation, and it goes beyond the usual, and it gets a little deeper, and really something magic happens.
Yeah.
And
I've got to read some of these questions because when you hear the questions, you'll understand why. Because they tap at, I think, true humanness, right? the last time I cried was I had trouble sleeping. The last time I had trouble sleeping was the last time I did a good deed was the last time I got angry. The last time I did something brilliant. The last time I did something stupid. The last time I had a mystical experience. The last time I stole something, the last time I lied, the last time I thought about suicide, and the last time I felt love. I mean, these are questions that get deep into our human soul, I think, and all of us experience these things. So sharing them is,
Sure.
yeah,
Yes.
just a connection that you don't have.
Yeah.
You should almost ask each other, and every date you should ask these questions. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the other good thing on that exercise, it shows we have a common experience. So someone
Mm-hmm.
takes suicide, for example. People usually don't talk about having thought about suicide
Mm-hmm.
or experience. And once they do, they realize everyone else in the circle has
Yeah.
had some experience with it, so they don't feel so different. Or
Right.
stealing something. Everyone has stolen something. I don't care who you are. Everyone has
Right.
stolen something. So again, but you don't talk about that. You know what I mean? And once you do, you realize you're not that different. We all share the human experience, and that's so important to realize that. And so I find I love that exercise.
Yeah,
And
that it's a
yeah,
great one.
yeah.
What is it the one thing that you would like people to take away from the book and your teaching generally? If there's one lesson you could teach us, what would it be?
That you can take control of your life no matter what your circumstances and experience are, and change it for the better in whatever you define as better.
Hmm. 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 All right. We've been talking to Professor Bernard Roth, and we'll be talking about the achievement habit. Stop wishing, start doing, and the key thing, take command of your life. It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. Would love your support in any way by giving me comments below, or to subscribe to the show, or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.